Welcome to the 13th episode of Season Tickets. I'm Michael.
And I'm Matt.
And this will be our fourth Friday debate show. And in this show, we are going to be previewing some things for the college football playoff and also some college conference champions. And we start off with a contender or pretender for competing for the conference title. And we start off with Northwestern. Max, do you think Northwestern is a contender or a pretender in their conference title?
I'm going to slide towards pretender in this because, Northwestern's off to a great start, but they're known to not play very well in Big Ten play. If you go back a couple years to when they were 4-0 into the Ohio State game, they were ranked. They lost to Ohio State in a good game. It was fun to watch. Carlos had a huge game, but after that, Northwestern won one other game.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think they have a little bit better chance than the next team we're going to mention, not because they're a better team, but because they're in an easier division. They are in a very weak division, but I still don't think Northwestern is going to do it with the fact that you said they normally fade once conference play starts. But do you think Indiana is a contender or pretender?
Indiana, I would say, would be a contender in Northwestern's division, but Indiana has to beat Ohio State, Michigan State, who are the top two teams in the country right now, and they'd also have to beat Michigan, who's playing really good. And Indiana's off to a great start. I don't have any problems with them, but I just don't see them beating Ohio State, Michigan, or Michigan State.
Yeah, I agree. Like what you said, they don't have to beat all three of them, but like competing for the conference title, you have to be like in the top 2 or 3 in your division, and there are 3 teams definitely better than them. So
right.
I will agree with you that they are a pretender at this moment.
But Indiana is a program on the rise at the moment, so they've had some good players, but their defense is still pretty bad. Yeah,
their offense is playing well, but now we're going to go into Cal, and I think that Cal is a contender because Jared Goff is one of the best quarterbacks in college football. They've been playing very well, and their game against UCLA could be absolutely massive, as both teams could be 5-0 entering that game. Max, do you think they're a contender as well?
Yes, I do believe Cal's a contender. They're in the side of the division with Oregon, and I think that they can definitely beat Oregon with the way Oregon's been playing, and Jared Goff has looked very good this year.
Yeah, that division's been very weak compared to the South with some other teams that we'll be mentioning for the college football playoff contender. But do you think Oklahoma State is a contender or pretender?
I'm going to go with a pretender in the Big 12. We're previewing a team next that I think is a little bit better than Oklahoma State, and I can't see Oklahoma State beating teams like Oklahoma, Baylor, TCU, and the next one we're previewing.
I'm going to disagree with you on this one. I think that Oklahoma State is a contender. I think they're a little bit better than the next team we're going to mention. They already have a big win over Texas in 30-27, so that's a good win for them. So I think they can stay contending for the conference title. But as I said, that the next team, West Virginia, I think that they're a pretender. I just don't think they're as good as some other teams in the deep Big 12 like Oklahoma State, Oklahoma, TCU, and Baylor. Max, do you think West Virginia is a contender or pretender?
I think West Virginia can definitely be a contender. I don't see them beating teams like Baylor and TCU, but I do think that they could sneak out a win against maybe an Oklahoma, and I do think that they could beat Oklahoma State as well.
Now we are going into our last team for the conference title, and that's going to be Florida. Max, do you think Florida is a contender or pretender in the SEC East?
I'm going to go with a contender. I've liked the way Florida's been looking so far this year, and they already have a couple solid wins in Kentucky and Tennessee, and I think they can continue it as they play in the SEC East, which besides Georgia isn't really the best division there is.
Yeah, I totally agree. I jumped on that bandwagon real quickly after they beat Kentucky, and I just really think that they could easily finish second in that division. I think they are better than Tennessee, South Carolina, Kentucky. Basically everybody but Georgia, I think they're better than. So that could be very interesting. They play a huge game against Ole Miss. I did pick Florida to get that upset, so we'll see if they get a win over Ole Miss. Anything's really possible for them. But now we are going into our contender or pretender for the college football playoffs. So some better teams in this one, and we start off with UCLA, and I think that they are definitely a contender for the college football playoff. Josh Rosen and Paul Perkins have formed to become one of the best offenses in the country, and they do have a very hard schedule, which is something that I am a bit concerned about, and also losing star linebacker Miles Jack will give them some adversity, but they've looked so good at the start of the year. They absolutely demolished Arizona. Max, do you agree with me and think that UCLA is a contender?
Oh yeah, I've liked the way UCLA has looked this year. I think Josh Rosen is going to be a very good college quarterback and even a pro quarterback soon, and Paul Perkins is one of the more underrated running backs in the country.
Now we are going into Georgia, and Max, do you think Georgia is a contender or pretender for the college football playoff?
I'm going to go with a pretender for Georgia. I mean, Nick Chubb is really good. I like him a lot. But around him, I'm not too impressed with Georgia. And I just can't see him playing for the college football playoff.
Yeah, I agree with you. They have a huge game against Alabama, which I think is a loss. And even though the SEC East is pretty weak, I still think that another loss in the SEC championship game will cost them. And Nick Chubb isn't as good as the running back on the next team, LSU, who I do think is a contender, as I think they are probably the most complete team in the SEC West, as they have looked very good this season. Leonard Fournette is a man among boys, and I think that he can lead them into contention for the college football playoff. Max, do you agree with that LSU is a contender?
Oh, yeah. Leonard Fournette is the truth. That man is the real deal. He is very fun to watch, and they have played very well this year, including a blowout win against Auburn, who a lot of people thought was a playoff contender at first, and it's still a decent team, but blowing them out nonetheless.
Now we are going into Texas A&M, and I think they are a pretender for the college football playoff. Even though they've looked good at the start of the year, they kind of fell off last season. I think they do the same. Max, are they a contender or a pretender?
I think Texas A&M is a pretender. I don't think you'll see them fall off the way they did last year. But in that division, I don't think they're better than LSU or Ole Miss or Alabama.
The next team we are going to preview is Notre Dame, and even though they've had a lot of injuries, I do think they're still a contender. I've been really impressed with the way they've played so far this season. I was a little bit of a doubter at the start of the year, but they have a bunch of talent all across the field. Max, do you agree with that they are a contender for the college football playoff?
I put them in at the beginning. I'm staying with them. I've liked the way they look this year. They have a tough schedule, so those wins could help them out in the college football playoff race, and I think they are definitely good enough to win those games.
Speaking of a tough schedule, we go to a team they play this Saturday, Clemson. Max, do you think Clemson is a contender or pretender?
I'm leaning a little bit towards the pretender side. I think they lose to Notre Dame, which I think hurts their playoff chances big time in the weak ACC.
I'm going to go with a pretender as well. I think they do lose to Notre Dame, and I'm not fully sold on Deshaun Watson. They struggled against a weak Louisville side, so I think that they're definitely a pretender.
Wasn't Deshaun Watson your Heisman pick at the end of the year?
Yeah, but I haven't liked him so far this year. I found out that he's not as good as advertised, and I just don't believe in Clemson right now. But now we are going into another ACC team in Florida State. Max, do you have them a contender or pretender?
I could see Florida State as a contender. I mean, I think they're very talented, and they're slightly better than Clemson. And Dalvin Cook running the ball, he's also one of the better running backs in the country, too. What about you, Mike?
I'm going to go with a pretender. I think that they slip up here and there some time throughout the season. I definitely don't see a one-loss ACC team getting into the college football playoff. But the next team we're going to preview is going to be another Pac-12 team, and that is Utah. Max, do you think Utah is a contender or a pretender?
Utah's looked very good this year, but I'm going to go with pretender. They're in a pretty tough division so far with UCLA, and I think that'll be a fun game to watch, but I think UCLA would beat them for that spot.
Yeah, I totally agree with you that they're in a very tough division, but I am going to go with a contender. I think that UCLA and Utah are the class of the Pac-12. You saw Utah demolish Oregon, and also UCLA demolish Arizona, so they're the class of the Pac-12. I have them being a contender, and last but certainly not least is going to be Oklahoma, and I have them as a contender as I don't like how TCU is playing. I think they are probably the second best team in the Big 12. Max, are they a contender or pretender?
I just don't see them beating TCU or Baylor. I'm going to go pretender.
And that will wrap it up for this episode of Season Tickets. If you enjoyed, make sure to leave a like and also subscribe for more Season Ticket videos.